You know, they've been fighting a war against a guerrilla army for 30 years. They've failed continuously to quell that uprising of people fighting for their land. So in a last-ditch attempt, he tries to round up all the people. Now, some genius in his department has suggested this to him. A soldier with even an ounce of experience and intelligence would have seen that it was going to fail.
There are 2,200 white men. They have 1,000 stands of arms, 30,000 rounds of ammunition, and 300 sets of handcuffs.
Part of the crudity and barbarity that happened in Tasmania was because they gave weapons to convicts and said, oh no, we want you to stake out this bit of country here and quell the uprising, which is code for shoot as many Aboriginal people as you can find.
Much of the official government history of Australia purports that Australia was settled peacefully. It purports that the Australian Constitution was the only constitution in the world developed in a time of peace. Australia had no revolutions or wars. Well, the Black Line and the Black Ward put the lie to this grand national mythology.
And then it was the largest military operation domestically in Australia until the 20th century. It cost a great deal of money, millions in modern day money.
All the boys were so excited, you know, they had their dogs and they were firing weapons day and night. They didn't see any Aboriginal people, but they were firing the weapons and it was just a cacophony. It was just this barrage of artillery going off. And according to some of those women, it was absolutely terrifying.
The threat of the Black Line is used by Robinson to convince those he meets to join him.
I described to them the formation of the line by tracing it on the ground with a stick, and informed them that the mighty enemy were at that time engaged in capturing their countrymen and would shortly appear in formidable array in front of their own territory. They complained in bitter terms of the injuries to which they had been exposed through the medium of the whites. I recommended to them to accompany me without delay. George Augustus Robinson.
The Black Line captures just one old man and a young boy. Robinson, however, is much more successful, and his fame is increasing.
All the different plans have been rendered abortive, and I have reason to know that the work in which I am engaged is the work of God. George Augustus Robinson.
He's going to get a massive financial bonus if he gets every one. It's a sort of performance bonus that he's negotiated like modern day executives.
I did well to engage with the government for the capture of all the natives. For if I had been restricted to their first offer, I should not have seen any natives, and they would have been dissatisfied and would have withheld from me their reward. By taking the whole, I'll gain not only the reward, but the celebrity. George Augustus Robinson.
Governor Arthur is delighted that Robinson has rounded up some 300 people. He doubles his salary and rewards him with land.
Robinson's bloody massive achievement was only achieved by the desperation of the people and the diplomacy of people like Truganini.
En route to the promised haven at Flinders Island, 2/3 of the 300 people die of European disease by being confined together in jails and transit camps. Robinson celebrates the arrival at Flinders Island with a fireworks display and orders a feast to be held.
They'd been removed on the belief that they would return to country. They were rounded up, really, and set up in a little colonial village. And that's what Waibelina is. And they weren't allowed to speak language. They weren't allowed to do ceremony.
As soon as he got them to Flinders Island, he subjected them to a regime that was basically a crash course in becoming white.
They tried to teach them Christianity, trying to really push them into the white man's way of life, and of course it wasn't going to work. They had their own beliefs, their own cultures, their own heritage, and they wanted to maintain that. It was really traumatic.
In 1 year alone, 29 people die on Flinders Island. There are now only 90 people left.
This is not the glorious mission that he'd imagined of turning these people into an agrarian, civilised, sort of Christian folk. This is just a place of death.
And the place was incredibly well equipped. I mean, if you look at Waibelina and compare it with any other mission anywhere in Australia in the 19th and indeed into the 20th century, it was far better equipped, far more expensively set up than any other mission anywhere in Australia. Remember, they made thousands and tens of thousands of bricks for permanent buildings with good fittings and proper doors and door handles.
Truganini is witness to the mounting death toll.
There will be no blackfellas to live in the houses. Truganini.
But of course, once they got the Tasmanians off the mainland of Tasmania onto the Bass Strait Islands, there was no way that the settlers would let them come back.
He actually said, look, it'll just lead to a collapse in property prices, and we're not having that hassle. You know, it was all quite convenient for the authorities just to keep them on Flinders.
A lot of those people died facing south, looking to their homeland. Robinson writes about it in his diary. He didn't understand it as completely as he should, but the people sat on the beach looking to their homeland. They lost their spirit, and disease always picks up those who have lost their spirit first.
The sad mortality which has happened among them since their removal is a cause for regret. But after all, it is the will of Providence, and better they die here where they are kindly treated than shot and inhumanly destroyed by the depraved section of the white community. George Augustus Robinson.
And so just at that moment when it was realised that the Aborigines on Flinders Island were, you know, their numbers were declining very rapidly, suddenly it emerges as sort of a view, well, maybe there's a rational reason for this. Or rather than saying it's because the settlers slaughtered them, let's find there must be some scientific reason. That thinking starts to work in with new ideas about evolution.
In 1836, the scientist Charles Darwin stops in Hobart on his epic journey around the world. What he sees informs his theory of evolution, later published in his monumental book, The Origin of Species.
All the Aborigines have been removed to an island in the Straits, so that Van Diemen's Land enjoys the great advantage of being free from a native population. This most cruel step seems to have been quite unavoidable, as the only means of stopping a fearful succession of robberies, burnings and murders committed by the blacks, but which sooner or later must have ended in their utter destruction. I fear there is no doubt that this train of evil and its consequences originated in the infamous conduct of some of our countrymen. 30 years is a short period in which to have banished the last Aboriginal from his native land. Some even think the race will soon become extinct. Charles Darwin.
If society was evolving, then there had to be winners and losers. And the Tasmanians were